And here we are, 2,000 years later, telling the story in Massachusetts. So how do I transition from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset? Like, how do I go in that direction like Jesus was in? Like the disciples are going to do eventually as church leaders. Here's some ideas. Start with this. Ask the question, what moves me? What moves me? This whole story starts because Jesus is moved by compassion. So what strikes you in the gut? I mean, honestly, when you look at what situation in your world moves you to want to do something about it. Here's two things I've learned, though, for this compassion. One, I really believe proximity matters. It's hard to feel compassionate about a situation when you're removed from it. So get involved somewhere. Start testing the field. Whether you want to visit somebody in the hospital through the care ministry, whether you want to serve food on the streets with Net of Compassion, or whether you want to check out WARM and see what you might be able to do for Afghan refugees coming into the region. They deal with refugees from all over the world. Start testing the waters by doing things. And when you feel that compassion move within you, it's going to change you. Because compassion grows when you can see it in someone's face, when you can smell their desperation, when you touch them and they're trembling, when you can hear their fears and concerns. Then all of a sudden you're going to feel compassion begin to stir within you. And you'll know you're doing the right thing when that compassion begins to really mobilize you to want to sacrifice to meet that need. But a second thing about compassion, your physical health matters. We are coming out of a pandemic and we are exhausted from all of the pivoting we've been doing, whether it's at work, whether it's homeschooling, whether it's trying to manage your schoolwork, whether it's trying to manage your kids in their schoolwork and in your own work, whether it's all the grief you've experienced, all the struggles of the pandemic. You got to tend to yourself. I've found that when I am physically, emotionally depleted, it's hard for me to feel compassionate. And those are times I have got to find where I get precious days to rest, or I take a vacation so that I can come back recouped, and then I find my compassion index increase. So what about this? Do a faith check. Right? This is what Jesus did. Jesus had a great faith check. When Jesus approached God, he just believed that God was going to do something about the situation. How would he know that? Well, one, Jesus knew the promises of God. He was very familiar with God through the Bible. We're blessed that we have all the Bible that Jesus read and the New Testament about Jesus and life after Jesus. Because he spent so much time in the Bible, he understood both God's nature, his compassion, and God's promises, and was confident in God's power to deliver on them. This is why we're always telling you to read the Bible. How can you know a promise if you don't read it and understand it? And I'd even say memorize it so that you have it when you need it. And he had past experiences to draw on. Jesus was probably thinking, man, I spent 40 days in the wilderness. I had no food and no water, and yet God supplied and sustained me. Of course he's going to feed these people. This is nothing. So I love to do? I love to open up old journals. Whether it's journals of just my reflections or journals of my scripture, in regards to scripture reading, or I like to take out old pictures of things like ministry events or mission trips. And I look at them and I get encouraged and reminded, if God could do that in the past, imagine what he's going to do now. And then I like to, look at what God is doing around me. This is why I love our baptisms. Because think about this. Jesus was already healing people. So if God's power and compassion were already pouring out in healing people, why wouldn't that same power and compassion pour out into the lives of people who are hungry? Like I said, this is why I like our baptism process. When we show a baptism video or we listen to a testimony, it just lifts my heart. Look at what God is doing in our church. Look what he's doing in the lives of the people in our church. I love those moments. Just look around you. Focus on what you have. Focus on what you have. Jesus only had a few pieces of fish and a few loaves of bread. Okay? And he took that and he said, God, you have to deal with this. Now, here's the thing. In focusing with what you have, It's not focusing at what you have with a discouragement of it's not near enough. It's saying, God, this is what I have available to you. The disciples focused on this is not enough. Jesus focused on this is what I can give you. And God did a miracle. You know what? I've learned this. I've had it reignited in my life through my partnership, our partnership as a church, my relationship with Island Mission. Pastor Dina. You've heard us talk about him plenty of times. I love Pastor Dina. You know, Pastor, when I first met him, and he was kind of telling us what we do, and and at one point I said, like, Dina, you have all these churches in the the Malagasy rainforest. And you get all these churches distributed, and you talk about doing Bible training. How do you do Bible training for all these churches? And he laughed, and he said, I thought to myself, God, I need to train these pastors. I don't have enough Bibles for all these pastors. And honestly, many of them can't read English. So what good is a Bible going to do? And I'm not even sure they could read Malagasy well. Well, he discovered a company that put out the Bible on a solar-powered MP3 player. And then he talked the company into giving them a whole bunch at a discount and got somebody to pay for them. So they could give them the Bible on an MP3 player and then taught them how to navigate through the Bible, and they could all listen as a church together. Well, then he discovered that there was room on the storage card for him to supply some teaching, so that he gave them a Bible that they could listen to as a church. And then he turns around and he shows them how to find Bible studies based on what they just listened to give training to the pastors. He just took what he had and he gave it to them.